Welcome to the Putback here on SNY.TV. I'm Ian Begley, SNY NBA Insider, and we are here to break things down. Knicks and the NBA with you for the next half hour plus. We got two great guests with us today. We got Combos Court, Andrew Salop, 10-year professional player overseas in Europe. Played at DeWitt Clinton High School in the Bronx, so DeWitt Clinton's finest, and he's got the Combos Court podcast that he has had up and running for a while. It's a great show. You should give it a listen. Shaun Geddes, of course, at this point, I'm calling him a celebrity Knicks fan. You catch him baseline with Ben Stiller, and he is part of that I'm Possible brand, so check that out. But guys, we're going to get right into it here, but before we do, send your questions in the replies, and we will be sure to answer some of those questions later on in the show. But let's start now with the baseline. The Knicks offense looking very strong in a win in Phoenix last night, and also looking very strong in those games against Washington and the second game against Brooklyn, 30-plus assists in those games. Offense seems to be finding a rhythm. New guys seem to be clicking in a way that you didn't see in the first few games. And whenever you put up 130 plus on the road, it's a good night offensively. Andrew, let's start with you. What are you seeing from this offense? And does it look like guys are getting more comfortable based on what you saw earlier in the season?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on the show, Ian, and great to meet you, Shaun. Yeah, Knicks offense, more player movement, more ball movement. They're playing modern basketball, shooting more threes, more shots at the rim. I love everything they're doing it. And you love to see the synergy between Cat and Brunson. Brunson has been playing great. The numbers have been great, but he hasn't looked quite like MVP Brunson until recently. And I think that's partly because other teams are throwing him different looks. They're pressuring him full court. They're putting bigger defenders on him, but he's starting to get his rhythm. And the Knicks offense is looking great. They're playing more modern basketball than ever before.
Modern basketball, Shaun Geddes. Did you ever think you would associate that with your favorite head coach, Tom Thibodeau? What is this offense to you? The Cat Jalen Brunson pick and roll. To me, it seems like that timing is coming together, especially over the past few games. What are you seeing from those two in particular?
I think those two are the deadliest duo in the NBA. And I think there's other duos like the Jaylen Browns and the Jason Tatums of the world, and they're cool and everything. But like Jalen and Cat play off of each other, and so both of them thriving allows each of them to thrive. And so Jalen creates more space for Cat. Jalen is getting some of the most open shots he's ever gotten, and I think that was a little bit of the adjustment at first. And he's starting to understand the balance of like looking for Cat. You know, a few games early where Jalen was kind of used to going for his shot in certain instances, but he realized all the gravity he has and what it allows Cat to do. And I believe that, you know, when he looks out the camera, he makes that kick out off the pick and pop, like, and bigs have to close out to an open paint behind him. It's almost like Cat's most effective role is his pop, because a big the Nikola Vucevic's or the Brook Lopez's or the Yusuf Nurkic's of the world having to close out to Cat with a full head of steam toward the basket, it's almost not even fair. And so that opens up the floor for everyone else. So I think they're the deadliest duo in the league just because everything that one does makes life easier for the other.
Andrew, I'm curious, just from a player's perspective, man, you played on a few different teams overseas, so I think this is relevant to you. When you're coming in with a new group, new faces like the Knicks have with Bridges and Towns and a new offense, how long generally does it take to really get on the same page with your teammates?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the individual. Are you a guy that's used to being a journeyman? Myself, I've played for many teams, probably too many, and every situation is totally different. But I think some of these guys, you know, Payne is a great example. He's played on so many different NBA teams. He's filling in right away with that energy off the bench. You know, it's not easy, but that's part of being a pro.
Right. Right. And, you know, the interesting thing to me and why I think that this thing will be more seamless than maybe it would be in other situations is because Karl Towns has come in here and he's made it clear that it's Jalen Brunson's team. It's his show. He's calling him Cap all the time, captain for Jalen Brunson's captaincy. And the thing that I'm curious about is, you know, with Anthony Edwards, obviously he came in when Towns was in Minnesota, and Towns seeded. I mean, I don't want to say seeded, but he was totally comfortable with Anthony Edwards kind of being the number one future of the team. I wonder if that helped him with this transition here in New York, because everything he's saying and what you're seeing on the court is a guy who wants to fit into what's been established here. And I think overall that just will make this work better than it might have if somebody's coming in here disrupting things. Shaun, for you look at, we're going to look at this trade all season for years to come. What do you think about the Cat Randall DiVincenzo deal right now?
I think, they have to stop trying to rob him. Leon Rose has to get Executive of the Year. He just has to. I mean, right now, Cat is playing MVP level basketball. And as somebody who, not that I was looking for the trade to happen, not that I hated it, but I wouldn't have made it. A Knicks fan, I like to think I'm kind of smart, whatever. I wouldn't have made the trade. And so Leon went out there and he made a decision to improve the team despite the team having made improvements. And, we were looking like, oh, okay, that January Knicks team, they're going to come back and be this or that. And this team is just better, bro. This team is just better. It's a more optimal version. It's a more optimal roster to build around Jalen Brunson. And we're seeing it work out. And it's allowing everyone else to be better. And so now Josh Hart is being maximized. OG Anunoby has space to cut back door or take people off the dribble and operate in the mid-range. Mikal Bridges, the mid-range is open because the Payne is open. It's just Cat opened the floor for everyone and even himself, and the sky's the limit for this team offensively.
Andrew, what about you? The Julius DiVincenzo fit versus the Karl Anthony Towns fit in this deal. What's your assessment so far?
Yeah, I love the fit when the trade first happened. And my immediate thought was, I think Mikal Bridges' actually role must change in the playoffs. Now, he's been playing better lately, but without Julius on this team, a guy who could draw doubles, get doubles, from a perimeter perspective, now they only have Brunson as a guy that could get doubles. Obviously, Cat as a big could draw doubles, but I do think for them to inevitably beat the Celtics, which is the team they're going to have to beat to win the championship, Mikal Bridges is going to have to step up.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll just say quickly on the trade, the thing that I wonder about is with Julius Randle, if they hadn't made the deal and they were not going to extend him, which I don't think they were, he would be here, contract looming, and then invariably he's a lightning rod. So if they lose a few games, I'm sure everybody would be getting on Julius, and between that and the uncertainty around his contract, I just think it would have been a tough situation. So I have to factor that in when I look at this deal. But Andrew, you bring up a very interesting point on Mikal Bridges. There's been a lot of dissection of his shot. Is it a new shot? Did he change his form? He's been great shooting from the baseline beyond the arc, not as good on non-baseline threes. What are you seeing from his shot? Does it look different to you? Does it look like uncomfortable? Is there a hitch there? What do you see?
Yeah, the energy transfer is still not great, and it's not really affecting him from mid-range. But from three, even when he makes shots, I don't like how it looks. And it's going to be interesting to see if he can stay consistent throughout the course of this season. And as I said, again, I think he's really the X factor. I actually think for them to succeed in the playoffs, we're going to have to see him initiate more. And earlier in the season, when the shot wasn't falling, he was losing confidence. And I feel like now, since he's making a few, he's starting to gain confidence. But I do think he still needs to make a few minor tweaks to that jump shot for him to be absolutely consistent from three, like we saw against the team they played against last night, his former team, the Suns.
Yeah, and he did hit one of those non-baseline threes, and he looked very much in rhythm early on in that game. Shaun, I think there's been a lot of concern and just some people are underwhelmed by Bridges' performance on both sides of the ball so far. I don't see it that way. I see it as early in the season. I think that ultimately he'll be who he has been his whole career. Where are you on Bridges? What's your assessment so far?
I'm there with you, Ian. I think it's early. I think there's a lot of adjustment to have happen. And I also take into account that, not only is he adjusting to a new role, but the entire team is adjusting to kind of a new format. And so he has to find himself within that. He has to find where to pick his spots and just kind of get an understanding of where that is. I wasn't the most thrilled about him changing his jumper when he got here. But, personally with me, it's just hey, it's changed now. Whatever you're going to do with it, just figure it out. And I feel like he's figuring it out over the course of time. I still feel confident when he puts shots up. I want him to continue to do so. And, he needs to be more consistent defensively, but so does the entire team. And I think that, even last year with Dante DiVincenzo in the beginning of the year, he was coming up the bench and giving us 7 points a game. He was, kind of sporadic. And then by the end of the season, he's averaging almost 30 down the stretch. It's just you got to give guys some time to get acclimated. And I think that once he does and we're fully clicking on all cylinders, it's going to be beautiful.
Interesting thing to me, too, being in that locker room over the past couple weeks when these guys were home, Josh Hart a few times unsolicited has brought up Mikal Bridges and the criticism around Bridges after the first game of the year. He said it's stupid to talk about his shot and to worry about his shot because he's a career 38% three-point shooter and he's going to be fine. He works too hard and he cares about the right things. He'll be fine. And then more recently, he talked about everybody wanting Bridges to be perfect and the idea that Bridges can impact the game many different ways, even if he's not shooting it well. He's a winning player. Hart said that's why you go get him. And he said, we gave up 5 high school players to get him, so we're fine. And so I just think, it's interesting because it's not like people are asking Josh about that, but he's bringing it up organically on his own. And I'm wondering, Andrew, just a locker room dynamic there. What do you think Josh doing that publicly means to Bridges and to the group?
I love it. I mean, it's still the Nova Knicks. You have to support your teammates. He knows Mikal is a major key for this team to win it all. And I'd love to see, we saw Mikal Bridges with the Brooklyn Nets look like an all-star, even all-NBA type player. And I think there's always a chance he could get back to that. Like from what I said before, the jump shot doesn't look great right now, but confidence has so much to do with it. And I love that Josh Hart, his Nova teammate, is instilling that in him.
Speaking of Nova, we lost Shaun for a minute, but he'll be back. If you were on that team, right, they signed you, but you went to, let's say you went to Gonzaga, and you come in and you have these Nova Knicks, would you feel funny about that dynamic? Would it be would it be a thing for you at all going into that locker room if you're new on that team?
Absolutely not, because I think you have to fit into the identity of what this team is all about. And they are the Nova Knicks, and they are a Tibbs coach team, and you have to double down on grittiness, toughness, and just the Nova Knicks style of play. To be a professional, you have to fit in with the identity of the team. And if you're thinking any other way, it's not going to last. You're not going to last long in the NBA.
I'll just say briefly that I think some players during this Nova Knick tenure have thought about that. It has been on their mind, and it's just interesting for me, just because these guys are human beings. And are you in the inner circle? Are you out? I don't think that's impacting anybody in there right now. Speaking of campaign, earlier in the week, he said, "Listen." These guys, they have their own thing here, but they welcome you with open arms. I feel very comfortable. We've got a great thing in the locker room. We're able to joke around off the court, and we're able to hold each other accountable on the court. And Campaign's been in a lot of locker rooms. And he said, this locker room, people like each other, and that's important in the NBA. So Campaign, one example of a non-Nova Knick who has fit in and feels good about his place here. For you, Shaun, talking about Campaign, I mean, he has scored the ball really well recently. Miles McBride will be back. We'll get into that a little bit later. But with Cam, how do you see him fitting into this hierarchy, and what have you seen from him so far?
Cam's done an excellent job, and I'm not going to lie. I wasn't necessarily – he's a Knicks, so I'm rooting for him, but I wasn't rooting for Cam when he got here. I wanted Tyler Kolek to play, and I wanted him to be in the rotation. But Cam has done an excellent job to the point where I don't even bang that drum because he's come up the bench. He's done what we needed him to do. And beyond the shooting, Cam has never seen a shot he didn't like ever. And I think it's hilarious. But I went to the Pacers game and I went to the Cavs game. I went to shoot around. And so for the Cavs game, I was a shoot around for Cam. And I'm just watching him and I was like, this is why you shoot from wherever. I don't blame you. If I worked out and I shot like this, I would shoot from wherever in the game as well. And so it kind of, seeing him work raised my confidence in his shot. So I can only imagine what it does for his confidence. And my main thing with Campaign has been defensively. He's up and he's picking up full court. He's, aggressive. He's on the ball. He's doing a great job. He's bringing the energy. And so I think just his energy is infectious, and I think he fits in perfectly. And I'm excited. I know that he's going to make some big shots for us in the playoffs, and he's going to have some big moments, and he's going to be a Garden favorite for a very long time. It gives me like Chris Child's energy.
That's interesting. That's an interesting comp, Andrew. I'm glad you brought up defense, Shaun, because I want to go there, right? Because this Knicks team, we think they're going to outscore people. If they're healthy and they're playing to their capabilities, the offense is going to be very good. We've seen how good it is over the past few games. I think it's just going to continue to be that if everybody's healthy. But the defense is where the difference is going to be for this group, right? Are they able to get stops in the playoffs? Are you able to get stops down the stretch of a game when you need them? You have strong defenders in Josh Hart, in Mikal Bridges, in OG Anunoby. Andrew, I'm just curious from your perspective, based on what you've seen, what do you think the Knicks have done well defensively so far, and what have they done poorly?
Well, Payne was also great last night, to Shaun's point, on defense. And the defense that he was playing led to offense, right? Transition dunks for Jericho Sims. I think defensively, Wingstop is getting better and better. They're getting more chemistry on that side of the floor. And I do think some of the metrics around what Cat has been doing has been inflated. Is he the best defender in the world? Probably not. But I'm hearing a lot of stats around the internet that aren't exactly true when you hear 91% around the rim. I don't believe that. I think we've seen him hold up well against Jokic last year. So I think there's a lot of promise for this Knicks team when it comes to defense. And then you have Tibbs on top of it all. I think they're going to really find their way defensively. And their offense has already been great, but I also think defense leads to offense, which will allow the offense to get even better with easy transition buckets.
They definitely got out in transition in Phoenix. Shaun, what's your concern level on the defense? What are you seeing there?
I wouldn't say I'm very concerned at all. I mean, there's death taxes and the Knicks giving up open threes. And so I've come to accept it. I understand it. I understand that's what our scheme is at the end of the day. But it's just like, because we're going to give up so many open threes, it's important for us to do the other things correctly. It's important to protect the basket correctly. We're seeming to get a better understanding of like how we're going to play pick and rolls. And a lot of those things just simply come down to communication. And so where offense, you got to play with people to get an understanding. Defensively, like, by in the first week of the season, you may not have certain communications down. By, April, are they going to know exactly what they need to do and how to do it and how to, shade one way on the screen with all the different intricacies and details they comb over? I'm sure that by the time we get to where we need it to be, they're going to have it down pat. And like Andrew just said, once the defense is down, it's only going to help the offense even more. And I already don't feel like teams can really score with us. So when we actually start locking down like we're capable of, at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, like, you got to put the ball out there, and like I'll take OG Anunoby on anybody. I really will. As long as OG Anunoby exists, the Knicks defense will be fine. So I'm looking forward to it.
I think, Shaun, you're talking about the importance of the regular season. I'm with you. I'm team regular season. I hope that it gets back to, for all teams, it gets back to being very important because it's better. The league's better that way. The interesting thing to me when you talk about the defense, talked to a couple people from different teams, and somebody mentioned the idea that, hey, Denver, right? Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, not great defenders, but they had enough around them to be very successful, obviously win a title. And they compared this Knicks team to that model a bit with Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns and the defense around these guys. And so just thought it was an interesting comparison. Obviously, a long way for the Knicks to go to get to where Denver was, but I could see some of the similarities there. And I'm just curious, Andrew, when you see OG Anunoby, and what he does, I guess defending up and defending down, defending his position. What does he do well to you?
I think when we think of the word motor, we always think of big men, but his motor is just absolutely ridiculous on that side of the floor. He's always locked in. He slides his feet really well. He's really strong. He's a switchable defender, one of the best wing defenders in the league. And then if Mikal could step it up, Wingstop will be absolutely elite. So OG Anunoby is making a case to be an all-star with his two-way play.
Yeah, I mean, to me, Shaun, he's been the most consistent Knick so far. I don't know. I hear the golf clap. Would you give him that title so far? Most consistent, best Knick?
Most consistent. I feel like it would have to be a toss-up between OG and Josh Hart, because Josh Hart has just been phenomenal every single night. And I said last year, like, Josh Hart kind of has a thankless job. but he's doing it so well that you've got to thank him. Like, he's just everywhere. He's what's that movie called? Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Like, that's Josh Hart.
Yeah.
He's really all over the floor every single night. He's the secondary playmaker. He's shooting the ball now. Like, come on, man. Josh Hart is shooting the ball. That does so much for us. So yeah, but OG has definitely been super consistent, and I agree with Andrew. I'm banging the OG as an all-star drum, and OG is honestly probably a top 20 player in the NBA. Like, if defense is valued how it's supposed to be, and OG's out there putting up 20 a game, there's a lot of people in the NBA I'm not going to say are better than him.
Yeah, Josh Hart used to say you need to really watch the games to see his value, but now you can just look at the box score too and understand his value. He's just been fantastic for this team so far. Let's get to some injury updates because the Knicks are banged up, just like every other team in the league. They do have some significant injuries. First, we're going to hit Miles McBride. Miles McBride on the trip with the Knicks, which is a good sign, right? Because he probably wouldn't travel if the Knicks had ruled him out for all of these games during this 10-day road trip. He's with them. Tom Thibodeau did tell ESPN, who had the game last night, that he might be back during the road trip. So that kind of tracks with him being on the trip. Obviously, the knee inflammation is always a concern. But I think the Knicks just want to see this calm down and get it to a place where it's not going to come back and bite them, get it fully calmed down before they get him back on the floor. This is a guy who was shooting the ball really well, Shaun, before he went down. Is Deuce the guy on that second unit who's impressed you the most so far, or is it somebody else?
Oh, it's definitely Deuce McBride. I mean, Deuce has been excellent. I came into this season knowing that Deuce would step up, and I thought he exceeded my expectations. And I'm an optimistic person, so I love when my expectations are exceeded. I feel like Deuce is our sixth starter. And it seems like almost every game we have all starters getting in double figures, and then Deuce is also there with like 14, 15 points. And then defensively, you don't miss a beat. Like, when you have Mikal and OG out there, and you want that ball pressure, and then you get Deuce out there, I'm never like, okay, we got to get the starters back in when Deuce is out there. Like, whoever's job he's doing an excellent job. He looks really comfortable, and I'm excited to see how he grows over the course of the season, because even the Deuce McBride we had at the end of the year last year is nothing like the Deuce McBride we had in the beginning of the season last year. So I love what Deuce is doing now, and I can't wait to, like I said, see what Deuce is doing in April and May and June. So loving Deuce McBride's performance. Sixth man of the year. Well, no, Payne Pritchard is going kind of crazy. Never mind.
And Andrew, Shaun, I think with that bench unit, also keep in mind that I do think Landry Shamet, if his rehab goes well, will be back and will be a part of that bench unit if he continues to progress well from that shoulder injury. So that's something to keep an eye on. And a quick one, Precious Achiuwa. Tom Thibodeau told reporters that Achiuwa could be cleared for practice soon, could start practicing on the trip. So it's a good sign. He said probably wouldn't be back for another couple of weeks. But Achiuwa trending in the right direction. And now we're going to go to what we learned. And what we learned is presented by SUNY Binghamton University. Binghamton University is named the top school in the SUNY system, according to recent rankings from the Wall Street Journal and Forbes. Visit binghamton.edu for more information. And this week on the Binghamton What We Learned segment, I'm going Mitchell Robinson. Mitchell Robinson also on the trip with the Knicks. Tom Thibodeau told reporters that he's not close, but he's starting to do some basketball activity, just shooting the basketball, probably stationary. And so Tom Thibodeau did say he's a ways away. I think the Knicks' initial timeline of December, January is still there. Maybe late December, maybe early January if he can continue a pace. But he's not coming back anytime soon, making progress, though, which is a good thing. And the interesting thing to me on Mitchell Robinson is over the summer, I mean, we all kind of knew it. We were talking about it. He was available in trades, right? I'm not saying the Knicks were like looking to get off of him, but his name came up in several discussions, including in the Karl Towns discussions. And so he was gettable. And so I thought maybe coming into this season, that would be the case too. Maybe we'd still be talking about Walker Kessler or Nick Richards or them, dealing for a backup center. But I think that there's been a little bit of a sea change. You can never say the Knicks uniformly think X, Y, Z because there's many decision makers there. But I think there's some people of influence who see Mitchell Robinson now as an integral part of this roster if he can come back and be healthy, because, there's been defensive issues so far that we talked about earlier. Robinson, obviously one of the best rim protectors and best offensive rebounders in the league when he's healthy. So I think, some people of influence over there see him as somebody they need, somebody they're going to need, and the appetite to move him is certainly not what it was over the summer. So I just find that interesting as we continue apace early on this season with the Knicks. And now we're going to hit my friend and your friend, Matthew Spenley, because Matthew Spenley is going to bring in some fan questions for us. You guys have been leaving the fan questions, and Mr. Spenley has them, and he's going to relay them to us.
Fellas, hope everyone's doing great. Have loved the show so far. Let me get framed up like you guys all nice. I don't need our producers giving me any crap about it. Okay, so I want to start. William Kim is in our comments. He asked, who do you guys think is our third option? Felt like it was OG last week, but Josh Hart has been an absolute stud. So I know we talked about OG. I think the option part of it, it's funny we didn't mention Mikal either. I know, Andrew, you brought up Mikal as being a real big key. But, Andrew, I'm curious for you, when it comes to OG, watching him in Toronto, watching him with the Knicks last year, have you noticed anything different about his game and what he's brought to the Knicks offensively this year?
I think OG's always been OG. It's always about getting healthy for him. When he's healthy, he's great. And to William's question, I think it definitely has to be Mikal Bridges, because he's a guy that we saw with the Nets who could play at an all-star level with the basketball in his hands. And with teams like the Celtics who could pressure Jalen Brunson full court with big wings, you need another guy that could initiate from the perimeter perspective, right? Obviously, Cat's going to draw doubles, but we need a guy on the perimeter that could draw doubles as well. And I think Mikal Bridges could still be that guy with his increasing confidence.
And the mid-range game has obviously been great. Shaun, I'm curious what you think about those guys when you're thinking about kind of the pecking order in that Knicks offense.
So I came into the season thinking Mikal would be option 3 and that he'd be the secondary creator. And it can still happen over the course of the season, as like Andrew said, as his confidence grows and he gets more comfortable in the role. But I just think that OG is probably option 3 right now. And I think, William, that's a great question, because we ask it all the time, in the Space shows and post-game prosperity, just who is option 3? And it's almost like there's an option 3, A, B, and C. But OG's just been so aggressive. Whether it's, letting it fly from 3, whether he's hitting or not, which I love. OG has a couple of games recently being 1 of 7 from 3, 1 of 8 from 3. I love that. Last week he had 25 points and 8 rebounds. He was 1 of 8 from 3, and he still shot 60% from the field. That's how great he's been. So he's getting whatever he wants around the basket. He's dunking everything in sight when he gets there. He's got the confidence in the mid-range. He can create that shot at any time. He's so strong. He literally doesn't really have a dribble move, and he's putting up 20 a game. And so when OG makes a decision to be aggressive, and beyond making the decision to be aggressive, I think what we're seeing now is OG's become comfortable being aggressive. And I think that's what's taking him to a different level. It's one thing to be aggressive. It's another thing to be comfortable being aggressive. And OG was asking for an increased offensive role in Toronto. And a lot of us kind of laughed at him, what do you want to do? But now we're seeing what he wanted, and he's getting it and he's making it count. So I'm excited to see him continue to grow into the OG Leonard we all knew he would be when he got here.
I love his aggressiveness too. He's been awesome. I have a mini heart attack every time he falls to the floor, which is a lot during games. He is always on the ground when he's near the hoop. He's making me have a heart attack every time. Ian, all right, I know we talked about the offense. I want to ask you a question. I was thinking this watching the game last night, because the Knicks put up over 130 points in back-to-back games. And we've talked on the show in the past about how when the Knicks traded for Karl Anthony Towns, that they've just made a decision now to be a more offensive team. So I'm curious, I know you mentioned Mitch, and the Knicks now see him having a more important role. But do you think at a certain point the Knicks have just kind of said, maybe we're going to be one of those teams that just puts up so much offense that it doesn't matter if we're going to be the sort of defensive unit that's a shutdown unit, which of course feels a little opposite for Tibbs, as you mentioned, but I'm curious how you feel philosophically for them moving forward in regards to just the offense versus the defense.
Yeah, I think anybody, if you caught them in an honest moment, they would say, yes, we did sacrifice our defense for our offense. And, the big lure with Cat was kind of doing what he's doing now, knocking down shots from the perimeter, versatile offensive player, opens up the floor. You could play 5 out, but you're going to be losing something defensively. And I think that exactly was the trade-off that they made. Now, Tom Thibodeau is never going to say that publicly, but I'm sure that he feels like he has to make some adjustments, maybe do some things that he's not necessarily used to doing in terms of getting this team defensively where he would want it to be. And that's Thibodeau's brilliance on the defensive side. So we'll see how things progress there. I think they'll be better when you get Precious Achiuwa back. Mitchell Robinson, we talked about, I think they'll be better when he comes back. Miles McBride as well. But I think this team, more often than not, is going to have to outscore you to win games. That works in the regular season. Things slow down in the playoffs. And I was just asking people in the aftermath of the trade about that. And somebody said, hey, listen, we can get stops when we need them down the stretch of games because of the personnel. And we, they acknowledged that, yes, they may have taken a step back with the trade, but they felt confident that in crunch time, last 5 minutes of a game, they get stops when they need them, and the offense will be so good. So that kind of was the thinking, and I think Matt, you're right on with that question.
Yeah, and it goes to Shaun too, talking about OG. Just if whether it's a wing player, whether it's a big man, whether it's a smaller guard, if you can have a guy like OG to be able to say, get us a stop here, having him on the roster obviously helps a lot. Shaun, I'm going right back to you because you tweeted before the game last night that you believed last night would be the first of many times that Jalen Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns both went for 35. You were so close to being. You correct. So I want to commend you for being almost right, I guess. Nice job being almost right. And when do you think is the next game that they will both score 35 points?
It's funny because coming into the game, and it was like in the first quarter when he missed the free throw. And I didn't say it out loud because I didn't want to speak into existence, but I was like, if he ends up with 34, I'm going to be sick to my stomach. And lo and behold, he ended up with 34. It's crazy. There you go. But it really just comes down, and that's what I said about, that goes back to what I said about them being, I think, the deadliest duo because they help each other. So I knew that the Suns had Yusuf Nurkic and not really a lot of size to deal with Cat at all, and they don't have the perimeter defenders or the big as a defender to deal with Jalen in the pick and roll. And so I think teams are going to struggle. The teams like the Bulls, the teams I called 40 for Cat against the Bulls, he went for 46. Nikola Vucevic can't move. It's very, very simple. Fives cannot guard Cat one-on-one, and the paint is open, so they're going to have to do it with an open paint behind him. If they switch, now your center has to guard Jalen Brunson with no help behind him. So I think that, we play the Jazz. We probably won't play the whole game. Denver, they're going for 35 each against Denver. Nikola Jokic, come out and play. Come out here and dance. It's going to be beautiful to see. And right now, I'm already pushing Cat as the best center in the Eastern Conference. And after we beat Denver, I'm going to say some things. I'm going to say some things about Karl-Anthony Towns being the best center in the NBA. And based on the most recent data we have, they won't be deniable.
Twitter notifications are going on. They're turning on for that game, no doubt about it. Andrew, from one Nick to another, I know we kind of talked about him before too. I want to go back to Josh Hart just because his shooting this year has been insane and, a little unsustainable in some ways. But, I mean, he's shooting 76% from two. He's shooting 35% from three, which for him is quite solid. And I think he's also looked a lot more willing to take those shots. He said last night after the game, I'm confident in my shot. I'll leave the scared to shoot narrative for y'all. I like to play my game how I want to play my game. And he's just looked a lot more confident in that shot. So I'm curious, as you watch Hart and his shooting this year within the Knicks offense, what you've seen there as well.
Yeah, as I said earlier, they're playing more modern basketball, and I love teams that just get shots up. To Shaun's point, OG is getting shots up. That's really important because it's important to get shots up. The alternative is sometimes getting a turnover, right? So when you get a great look, you want to shoot it. Payne is another guy who's just getting shots up. Obviously, Cat is shooting 50% from three. He's getting shots up. Jalen's going to get him up. I love that this whole team is just letting it fly from three, and it's been really beneficial for them. Not only getting easy buckets at the rim, but also just getting threes up is so important and not thinking about it.
And I always think the harder the Josh Hart three, the more likely it is to go in. I love Josh Hart taking a three at the end of the shot clock. If there's 2 seconds left on the shot clock, I'm watching, I'm saying that's going in. No doubt about it. Mm-hmm. All right, my last question is an Ian-specific question. Ian, when the Knicks play on the West Coast, I need to know, What's your strategy for staying up for these games? What do you do? Is it an extra cup of coffee during the game? I know for me, I got to get home. I got to get myself like a nice snack or something. What's your strategy so you can make it through these West Coast games?
It's a good question, Matthew. I do have extra coffee. I make sure put the kids to bed early. And when I'm watching the game, I don't sit on the couch because I don't want to be too comfortable. So I'll either stand up or sometimes I'll take a chair from the dining room, bring it into the living room, and sit on that. Because if I get on the couch, bad things might happen. So that's my approach on these late ones, and it's been pretty good so far.
It's a great strategy. I'm just imagining Ian like 6 inches away from the TV watching the game, like just analyzing everything. It's great. I love it. All right, boys, that's what I got today. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Talkback with Matthew Spenley. Appreciate it. Guys, to wrap here, I want to hit quickly on this Rick Brunson NBA investigation thing. I don't know if it was a formal investigation. I don't know if it is a formal investigation. The NBA did contact the Knicks earlier this week, and the subject of Rick Brunson, Jalen Brunson cap circumvention was brought up. And Jalen Brunson, as we all know, he signed that extension, team-friendly extension this summer. He left $37 million on the table to do that. Rick Brunson also signed a new deal as an assistant coach, got a promotion, but he didn't get a $37 million contract. So I don't think that there's anything there in terms of something concrete. And also, I also think it's a little disrespectful to Rick Brunson and what he's done as a player and a coach to do this, to suggest that, the Knicks just handed him something as cap circumvention. His deal, I think, is within the normal range of top assistant coaches. He's been coaching for a long time, too. After his 7+ year playing career, he coached many different places, including the University of Virginia, Hartford, Chicago, Minnesota with Tom Thibodeau, and he worked his way up on those staffs. He was at the bottom of some of those staffs, working his way up. That's what you've seen here in New York. So, I find it a little disrespectful to Brunson's resume. But nonetheless, I'll get off my soapbox, and we will get to our predictions for the rest of the trip. Andrew, what do you think, man? We got Jazz, Nuggets, Mavs, Hornets. These last 4 games are the longest road trip of the year for the Knicks. They're already 1-0. Where do you see them finishing at?
I think they win all of them except Denver, especially if Jokic comes back for personal reasons. He's been out. So if he comes back, I think the Nuggets will win that one. It's tough with Jokic and, obviously the altitude. But if Jokic don't play that game, I think they sweep this.
Yeah, because no Doncic, too, in Dallas, and that's big. And, Shaun, what about you? Predictions, next 4 games?
So I've got us sweeping this, whether Jokic plays or not, and Jokic needs to play. Come outside. Like I don't want any asterisk. I don't want any. No, come outside. I don't want to see DeAndre Jordan. Come play. Like I want to see what you have. I want Cat to be better than you and to show it. And we have this thing we call the Thangs territory. So right now the board says forward and Thangs. So as long as we keep the streak going, it'll be 8 and things at the end of this trip. And so I'm very excited about that. And I feel like that the way that I do it is like the energy has to go up with each win. So I'm going to be in here screaming at 2 a.m. for post-game prosperity and worrying my neighbors. But it's okay because that's what winning does.
We're definitely going to keep an eye on your board, Shaun, as they finish out this trip. And that'll be it for us here on the Putback. I want to thank Andrew Salop, Combos Court podcast host, long professional career overseas. The podcast is great. Definitely check it out. Shaun Geddes, you know him, Knick fan extraordinaire. You can find him at the Garden, sometimes with celebrities, but he always has that impossible brand on him. So check that out. And we will be back here on the Putback with you guys next week. And then we've got more mailbags coming as well. So appreciate you being with us, and be sure to check us out next week. We'll see you soon.
Happy birthday.